Hey everyone, welcome to Church Online. It's Ray here. Well, we're well underway in our series on the book of Exodus, and this week we got another cracker message called Through the Chaos. This is about stepping out of that chaos and stepping into the faith and trust that we put in God, and then letting Him work through that. But before we hear from Pastor Matt, let's turn our hearts to God and worship together.
Church, let's respond. We're going to declare this bridge here. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God, amen? If you need to sing this over you, let's sing it to Him now. An almighty fortress. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows. You win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our. Sing again. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. Oh, we thank you, Jesus. When all I see is a mountain, you see the mountain move. And as I walk through the shadows, your love surrounds me. Nothing shall fear now. Yes, Lord, there's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. This is how we fight, church. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? Oh Jesus, there's nothing. For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. Oh, when I see the ashes, you see the beauty, Lord. Thank you, God. Oh, when I see the cross, God, you see the empty tomb. Oh, so when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Sing it out. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against
Hi there, my name's Chris Daines and I'm one of the pastors at Sindel Baptist Church. In my spare time I'm also chaplain for Victoria Police in the Homicide Squad and the Special Operations Group. I'm looking forward to coming to hang out with you guys at the men's event, not a conference, in a few weeks on the 14th of June. Should be a great time together. One of the things that we'll be talking about is what it means to be men of action, love and courage. Should be a ripping time together, and be sure to fasten your seatbelts before signing up. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Hi, lovely One Hope women. We are so excited to invite you to a beautiful night hosted by our women's ministry. Why are we so excited? Because we're going to be incredibly blessed to have Nicole Riddle as our special guest speaker for this evening. Nicole is an amazing woman of God who radiates God's love. She's going to be coming here, sharing her powerful testimony of her story through her cancer journey. This is going to be a message to encourage, inspire us women as well. To make the night even more special, we're going to have a time of worship, which the band and I can't wait to lead you in. There's going to be an opportunity for prayer, a time to connect with one another, and of course, some delicious supper to finish the evening. We're also once again going to be collecting items for our dignity packs for our sisters in Kawangwari. So if you'd like to help, please bring along to this event a few pairs of women's underwear. As we prepare to visit soon, this is a beautiful way we can contribute to this incredible ministry. This event is completely free, but please make sure to register so we can plan a great night for you and your friends. This night is going to be a great opportunity to invite someone along, so invite your mum, your sister, anyone out there who wants to come. Save the date, Thursday, June 19th, 7 p.m. at our Barrable Hills campus. We can't wait to see you there.
We are in the midst of a series through the book of Exodus, which is a very important moment. The Exodus event is perhaps let's say, the second most well-known story in the Bible, I think. Who's seen the old movie, the Charlton Heston movie? Yes. Well, probably if you're much younger than me, sort of 40-ish, then you probably haven't seen it. You haven't seen it, Mark? Too much time with your dryer. You could go and watch that. But it's a great film. Anyway, it's probably the second most well-known event in the Bible. And today, I want to look at actually the whole event. Now, you know, for those of you who are not familiar, and I know many of you might be visiting and never heard this story before, that's totally fine. It's just a little bit of a reminder. It's the story of how God sends Moses to Egypt, to Pharaoh, saying, "Let my people go." His people, the Israelites, are enslaved in Egypt, and these plagues come upon Egypt, and Moses eventually leads them out with the Egyptian army in pursuit. They come to the edge of the sea. God opens up a pathway through the sea. They walk through the sea on dry land, and they end up at Mount Sinai, where Moses receives the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. How's that for a long story short? Right? That's a really long story short. Now, what I'd like to do, and this is a little ambitious, so we'll see how we go, is that I want to try and help us to grasp the big meaning of that story, because this story becomes the key picture or paradigm from this point on of what salvation looks like. It's what actually makes this story so powerful, I think, because it's used as a paradigm. Often these events are not just amazing events, but they're also actually signs of something beyond themselves. And throughout the Bible, this event is used as a symbol or a paradigm for what salvation looks like, for the process of God leading people out of a kind of spiritual captivity into freedom. And so seeing this in big picture, I think, is an important part of this. Now, to set this up, let me just explain. I need to explain something. We need to go back into the ancient world and try to put ourselves in a situation here. In the ancient world, civilizations like ancient Egypt and ancient Babylon and eventually ancient Greece and Rome and so forth, these civilizations, they understood themselves as pockets of order in the midst of what they otherwise saw as chaos. And chaos is an idea that was very familiar to ancient peoples. It was seen as a realm of death. It was almost a kind of hell for these people. Chaos was like the worst scenario. It's why, by the way, people would often be willing to subject themselves to the most tyrannous rulers in these civilizations, because the alternative of leaving this man-made order, which is what it was, and going out into the chaos was like way, way worse to whatever they were subject to within that civilization. And that's even often the case even with slaves. This is going to become an issue because the Israelites at this time are a class of slaves, and when they do go out, they're going to be so fearful, they're always going to be wanting to go back. Go back to what? Slavery. Yes, because exposure to the chaos, the forces of chaos, was the most feared thing. And so these civilizations, as I said, were seen as pockets, and there was a whole spiritual dimension to this as well. So these civilizations were these pockets of order in the midst of chaos. Now, they were pockets of man-made order. From a biblical point of view, we're still working with those categories of order and chaos. Genesis chapter 1 is very much built upon that. The great symbol for chaos in the ancient world was the oceans, the waters, the heaving oceans. This is reflected in Psalm 93, which says, the seas have lifted up their voice, the seas have lifted up their pounding waves, right? This is chaos looming, right? Death, chaos, this kind of hellish reality looming over us. But it goes on to say, but the Lord is mightier. God is mightier than the breakers of the sea, than the forces of chaos. And what you see in Genesis chapter 1 is God creating a perfect order, this world that we live in as a zone, like a beautiful Garden of Eden in the midst of all of this chaos. But of course, human beings reject God and they go their own way. And then chaos begins to reign and you get this spiral into chaos. And human beings start building these civilizations to ward off the chaos. In the biblical narrative, Cain, the next generation, is the one that builds the first city, it says, but that's a fortress. And anyway, so you have these civilizations, man-made attempts, man-made devices to ward off the forces of chaos. But here's the thing. These empires, one after another, they kept imploding, they kept crumbling. The forces of chaos kept breaking in upon them. And the reason for that is that the source of the chaos is not out there, it's in here. And we see this again and again and again. Books like Jared Diamond's Collapse studies. There's so many books like this. I went through a phase where I read all these books about collapsing empires with a view to kind of analysing what we've got now. And it was like doomsday. Anyway, I had to remind myself, no, the Christian message is a message of hope, right? But it's not about hope for a man-made order. There's never any hope in a man-made order. It's always brittle because it's always undermined by the chaos, not that's out there, but that's in here. And what a lot of this literature underscores and what it narrates is this process by which empires crumbled, not because of what was going on outside, not because of external pressure, but because of internal corruption that took hold. The chaos was always on the inside. And so but people still preferred to live in these man-made orders. It was just really brittle. And inevitably what they created was a caste system. The order was always a caste system. There was no sense of there was no sense of equality, because they saw inequality as the natural and the ordered state of things. Okay, pretty much across the board in the ancient times. So all civilizations were based on caste systems, whether it's, you see this reflected in ancient Babylonia, for example, in the Law of Hammurabi. It's designed to preserve essentially a caste system, a social hierarchy, through to the caste system in India, which is very famous, even right up into the Greek period. The famous book by the philosopher Plato, Plato's Republic, was not arguing for an abolishment of a caste system, but a different kind of caste system. Now, empires like the Roman Empire saw it as absolutely imperative that you preserve the caste system. The last thing you want is social mobility. And so preserving that system, this is important, by the way, for understanding what we're going to look at. This is not just a history lesson. This is all relevant. This is why, for example, when Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go," there is no way that Pharaoh, the idea of letting this whole caste of slaves go, the whole thing's going to crumble, right? That would be fundamentally to disturb the social order in a way that they may not be able to recover from. They didn't want social mobility whenever they got to, when Pharaoh saw that they were getting too powerful. We've got to keep them repressed, right? Keep them in slavery. Everything is about keeping the social order, and they're terrified of anything else, right? So when Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go," Pharaoh sees that this is going to bring the forces of chaos down upon himself, to which God answers, in effect, "You want to see chaos? I will show you chaos." And the significance of what happens next in this story, these 10 plagues that come upon Egypt, and the number 10 is very significant here, because essentially what happens is a divine act of anti-creation. Remember, creation is going from chaos to order in Genesis chapter 1. What the 10 plagues are going to convey, or what is going to happen, is a complete collapse of that created order. So the 10 plagues correspond with the 10, this is where the number's important. There are 10 divine commands in Genesis chapter 1 by which God creates the world. And God said, and God said, and God said 10 times. Corresponding to that, there are 10 plagues that are acts of anti-creation. All the chaos is going to implode upon Egypt. Why? Because Pharaoh stood against God and God's word. He wants to preserve, this is human nature. I'm going to hold on to the order that I have created. It is the fundamental act of resistance in the human heart. And I guarantee it's happening in some degree in every single person in this room. You are protecting a man-made order, a human-made order. This is what Pharaoh is doing. He's holding on to the order that human beings establish. Even though God is calling his people to a new kind of order, even they will struggle with this. Even they are going to struggle with letting go of the old order. This is what we do. Because it's scary, right? We're afraid of the chaos, right? Because I know this, right? I've got everything in the order that I want it, right? Everything feels secure. Well, it's actually not secure. And if reading all of that historical doomsday literature underscored something, it was that the system in which we live is not nearly as secure as we think it is. And I think we're getting a taste of that, right? I think we're getting a taste of that. So, wave upon wave of chaos comes upon Egypt. And it's interesting, there are 10 plagues. The first few plagues, there's the plague of blood. The Nile turns to blood. This is the lifeblood of Egypt. It's the Nile. The Nile was deified, right? It's the God that gives life and order to Egypt. That God is hemorrhaging, in other words. It's very interesting, and if you want to go more into find out a little bit more in depth about how these plagues actually also speak to the Egyptian gods, you can jump online and listen to Thrive Deeper. There's a good little plug for Thrive Deeper there. But hey, we essentially create that as footnotes for what we do here. So do go have a listen to that and dig a little bit deeply, because I'm just drawing out some strands here, right? Then you've got the second plague, which is you get this plague from the water, then a plague from the ground, then a plague from the sky, right? The plague from the water. Frogs come and invade people's homes. A lot of what's happening here is things are crossing boundaries. In Genesis, in the God's act of creation, God set boundaries for things. Now everything's going to start crossing those boundaries. Then there's a plague from the ground. Lice, gnats come up and they invade people's body. And then there's a plague from the sky. Swarms of insects, flies come and envelop Egypt. And then the forces of death explicitly start to invade. The livestock die. Then human beings are affected. There is a plague of some kind of skin disease, boils, and then the sky implodes upon them, right? This is all of the boundaries are caving in here. This is anti-creation. Massive hailstones come down from the sky. Then locusts come and they strip the fruitfulness of the land bare. And then in the penultimate moment, there is a plague of darkness, because in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And now God said, "Fine, you want to live in darkness, then let there be darkness." And darkness comes upon Egypt. It's interesting, and this is just before the plague upon the firstborn, which is incredibly significant, the final plague upon the firstborn. This is the future of Egypt, their firstborn, right? And it's also significant because Egypt keeps laying hold. God often refers to his people as his firstborn, right? It's interesting, in the first few plagues, they are also experienced by God's people as well. Eventually, God will shield his people against these. He will shield them, but not straight away. At first, they're experiencing this, right? And again, I don't think this is just something that happened. I think this happens. I think God gives us a taste of the chaos. He will shield us, but he will also give us a taste of the chaos that he wants to shield us from. And then comes that moment, finally, and this is very broad terms, finally, the Israelites are let go. They go out during the last plague. When the angel of death comes over Egypt, there's a moment where God says something very, very important through the act of the Passover. I'm not going to go into this a lot of depth, but basically it's saying that the only difference between those who were covered are those who were dedicated to God. They were only covered because they dedicated themselves to God, and they did that by dedicating themselves through this act of putting blood on the doors and the lintels, the blood of the Lamb, which is ultimately pointing forward to what God would do for us in Jesus Christ, to come and pay for our guilt, to lift the curse off our lives so that we could walk in God's blessing. Talk about walking in God's blessing. What God does next is he takes his people out into the desert. They're terrified, right? Because they're leaving man-made civilization. You don't do this. Remember, this is the most feared thing of all. Now, it's going to get scarier than this. So first of all, they're leaving. They're out in the desert, very nervously exiting this sphere of life. Even though they were slaves there, they preferred to be slaves in a realm of order, life, man-made order, than go out and face the chaos. But God is leading them out. Why? Because that's a human constructed order. And I'm going to save you from that, he's saying. And so he leads them out into the desert and they're terrified. But it gets worse because the Egyptian army is chasing them and they're cornered up against the ocean. And God says to Moses, Moses, part the sea, as though it's really obvious. What are you doing? Just go there. Now think about what this is, what the sea represents. This is the forces of chaos. And Moses strikes the water and God opens up a pathway. They walk between the waters. And it says a couple of times in the text, it says, and there were walls of water. They walked on dry land through the sea with walls of water to the left and the right. Can you imagine how terrifying that would have been? Looming over them to the left and the right are the forces of chaos. God is holding back the forces of chaos. And he wasn't just doing something, God was saying something. He's saying something about what freedom means, about what life means. He's saying, I'm going to lead you on a pathway by which you will walk through the chaos. And I will hold back the forces of chaos. Now, as I said, it's difficult for us to perhaps empathize with this way of thinking because we take our very ordered lives for granted. We live in the midst of great privilege in our country. But I think lately we've experienced the fact that this is not as secure as we thought it was. And there's a lot of dread, I think, when we look at wars and things that are happening. And also, I'm not even going to begin to mention all of the things that are happening. But, people feel insecure and they start thinking, oh no, what about my superannuation and my investments and what about my business and how I think, because we like it all to be secure, right? Human-made order. We like our little human. It's not that there's anything wrong with those things as such, right? That's fine. But there's something wrong when we trust in those things because it's a man-made order, right? It's a human-made order. But here's the thing. If only we could transfer that sense of dread as we look out in the world. I mean, this is the thing. We can be world watchers. We've got the news and, it's terrible what's happening there. It's terrible what's happening. We feel the forces of chaos, walls of water to the left and the right, don't we? And particularly if it's touched you personally, right? If because of the present situation, things are kind of hard for whatever reason, and you feel like you're walking between walls of water to the left and the right, and the chaos kind of looms, you think, oh man, where is all this going? And it seems so uncertain. But here's the thing. If only we could transfer that dread as we look out into the world and we bemoan what's happening over there and we're so wary of what's going on here, if only we would realize that the source of the chaos is in here. If only we could transfer that dread to a sober recognition that all of the worst of the chaos that lies out there in the world, all of it is right here in every heart. And like those pockets of civilization in the ancient world, that were holding it together, right? They're holding it together. We do exactly the same thing. You know, it's like what civilization did in the context of ancient worlds, what civilization seeks to do now. Perhaps, shall we call it our civility? Sense of propriety, social acceptability. You learn to act and think and live in certain ways that wards off the chaos. You know, I'm going to be this kind of person. And we try to keep the forces of chaos at bay, kind of holding them back. They're all there. And if you have any degree of self-understanding, you will know that the forces of chaos are all there. And you know what? Every now and again, because, man, it can actually be exhausting keeping all of that under that veneer of civility and propriety and social acceptability. And you know, it's so exhausting that there come moments where we tend to just let it go. And do you know when those moments tend to be? It tends to be when we're with the people that we love the most. The chaos breaks out at home, doesn't it? And I want to tell you today that there is a thing that God does. One of the first acts that God does in his plan of salvation for you is to make you aware of the chaos that lies within. And sometimes, I would say even often, God does that by putting a crack in what you do to keep that all under wraps. And to a greater or lesser extent, every single person in this room, as I said, is holding down the forces of chaos. It's exhausting. Some people are better than others at that. Some people are not good at keeping that kind of layer of civility up. And they tend to be the people that feel like they're worse than anyone else. Listen, I want to tell you, I constantly have conversations with people who see the forces of chaos breaking out in their lives, and they think, oh, I'm so much worse than everyone else. And I always say, I know a lot of people in this church. And I know what's going on, right? So many people feel like they're alone because everyone else has got it together. And I know that you haven't got it together. And there is a work of God. There is a work of God by which God takes our holding it together, and he breaks it so that we can't hold it together. It's like him saying to us, what sort of order do you want? Do you want to keep trying to maintain that? Or do you want to really gain the power to overcome the forces of chaos in your life? There's a story in the Gospel of Matthew that mirrors the story of the Exodus. It's in Matthew chapter 14. The whole chapter is designed to show that Jesus fulfills the picture that's painted in the Exodus story is fulfilled in Jesus. That Jesus, not Moses, is the ultimate savior, right? This is what Matthew 14. So the first thing that happens, Jesus leads his people out into the wilderness. Then there's a miraculous provision of food. This is Matthew chapter 14. You can look it up for yourself. There's a miraculous provision of food, just like there was with Moses, right, in the desert. And then, who knows what the next story is? And then the disciples are in the boat. And they're on the Sea of Galilee, the sea with all that it represents. And they see Jesus walking to them, walking on the chaos. Walking on the chaos. The seas have lifted up. The seas have lifted up their voice. The seas have lifted up their pounding waves. But God is mightier than the breakers of the waves. He is mightier than the chaos. And they see Jesus walking on the chaos. And Peter says, Lord, call me out to walk. And he calls Peter out of the boat. And Peter steps out of the boat and he's freaking out, but he is enabled to walk upon the water. There's an interesting thing happens when you grow in faith. I always thought when I was younger, I always thought that when you grew, like God would grow me and things would get better. I get to a stage where I would think, man, how righteous am I? I mean, that I would just become so righteous. Now, the truth is he gave righteousness to me as a gift because he knew I wasn't. But one of the things that happens is that it's like God says, right, I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to clothe you in righteousness as a gift through Jesus Christ because I'm going to show you some things about yourself. And it's going to be really scary. Scarier than looking out there and thinking, oh no, what's going on? Oh, there's a war here. Oh, there's financial chaos. Oh, that's chaos here. No, it's way scarier than that. This is what has happened to me. It's like he's given me a vision of increasing clarity of the chaos in here. And all of the things, all of the, the boats that I built to keep myself afloat, right? All of the vessels that enabled me, I had a good upbringing and I have exceptionally good social graces, don't I, folks? But he has shown me how brittle that all is, how all of the boats, all of the vessels that I use to hold it together, he's calling me out of that. Because he's saying, no, I'm calling you to walk on top of the chaos. I'm giving you the power to walk on top of the chaos. And there have been moments, it's like, I think back, maybe, I don't know. I think back even like 10 years ago. I look back at this like this really self-confident, like I can do this. I've got these skills. I've got university degrees. I've got, the gift of the gab. I've got all of these, I've got all of this, I can do this, like the can-do kind of attitude. I don't know where that guy went, but sometimes I actually want to go back there. Honestly, I'm like, where is that? Where did that guy go? Like, there are day after day, I wake up in the morning and I say, God, if you do not help me, I'm going to sink. I'm going to sink. Now, that's just me being responsible, for my life and being responsible for being a husband and a father and just in those, let alone being the spiritual leader of a church. That's like, there's something terrifying about when you realize how much damage you can actually do. And I have realized that there is only one name given under heaven by which I can be saved. And every single day I get up and I say, Jesus, I'm stepping out of my boat because I know it doesn't work. I'm stepping out of my boat because it's sunk too many times. And I'm going to take your hand and walk upon the water. And it's terrifying. And it'll probably always be terrifying. It's really annoying, actually. I don't like walking by faith. I actually don't really like it. There's something in me that just doesn't like it. But man, it feels like freedom. it feels like freedom. And you will know God. You will know God. So, I better finish. Music team, better come up. We've got to finish, don't we, at some point? But listen, I want to do one more thing. Because as a result of my growth, I have a much clearer picture of what salvation looks like. And I'm seeing God answering some prayers and coming in amongst us and doing some amazing work. But you know what it looks like often first? It looks like smashing the boat. And I wonder if you feel like God is smashing your boat. Well, lift up your head, because that's the beginning of your salvation. That is the beginning of your salvation. I stand here as a witness to the fact that it is. It is the beginning of your salvation. You can trust Him with your life. Step out of the boat. Call upon His name. Whoever calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. I'd like you to stand with me. I want to take a moment for us to bring our chaos to Him. And then we're going to share communion together. We're going to take the symbols that Jesus gave us through which we cry and call out to His name. But I'd like you just for a moment, why don't you just close your eyes? Because this is a big decision. Are you willing? I want to ask you this question today. Whether you have been a Christian for decades or you're just rocked up here and you're just exploring faith, I want to ask you today, because you have this opportunity. God is for you. He's for you. If He's showing you the worst in yourself, it's not because He condemns you. He's come to you in forgiveness and reconciliation through Jesus Christ. And He's asking you the question, are you willing to put your life in my hands? Now, you might need some time to think about, and that's absolutely fine. We don't want to put pressure on anyone here today. But if you can say yes to that, we're going to start passing out some elements right now. The bread that represents the broken body of Jesus, the cup that represents the shed blood of Jesus. These are physical symbols that we use to say yes to Jesus, to call on His name. Now, if you do this and you mean it, look out. Because the salvation of God is not fixing your boat, it's saving you from your boat. But He is good. He is faithful. He's calling you to walk in freedom and joy.
What an awesome message. I hope you're as blessed and encouraged by that as I was. If you want anyone to reach out to you or you'd like to know more about the life of the church, don't hesitate to fill out a Connect card. But until then, we'll see you next week for Church Online as we go into week 4 on our series on the book of Exodus.